This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Joining us now is a former Secret Service agent within the Presidential Protective Division and also who was an operator on the counter-assault team. He is very significant in terms of presidential Secret Service protection. He is the man who knows of what he speaks. Joining us now is that man, Richard Staropoli. Please join me in welcoming him to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Very quickly, folks, I just want you to know that in addition to his being a special agent within the Secret Service division for 25 years, he also was tapped by President Donald Trump as the chief information officer for the Department of Homeland Security, and he plays a major role in terms of background investigation and information regarding various positions within the White House. But most recently, he worked at Fortress Investment Group, which is an international hedge fund with approximately $80 billion in assets. See, this is what I'm talking about, Rich. They go from government and then they make money. I just went from government and went into television, but maybe one of these days. In any event, Rich, let's talk about something quite serious, and that is the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Now, I think that everyone in America is familiar with what happened in Butler County, Pennsylvania, and the fact that not only was the Secret Service not on its game, but it appears that they were, as far as I'm concerned, so negligent, so reckless that it borders on intentional. What is your take of that happened on July 13th?
Well, I think your assessment and your use of the word intentional is absolutely correct, right? What we've seen here is a degradation and a cascade effect due to the poor hiring practice over the years within the U.S. Secret Service. You add to that the poor leadership and management and the fact that they've allowed their personal ideologies to influence decisions, which was clearly evident in the lowest level of protection that they possibly could have afforded to President Trump, simply by dealing with him as a former president and as simply as another candidate. And you saw what happened here. They allowed some kid to walk into that event site, and that's exactly what he did. He drove there, got out of his car, and walked into that event site, climbed up on that roof, and opened fire on the president. And they allowed him to take a shot at him.
But Rich Staropoli, when you talk about they afforded former President Trump the lowest level of protection, define that.
Well, at the highest level is what the public normally associates the Secret Service with, and that is the level of protection afforded to the sitting president of the United States. And that includes things like helicopter assets, visible things like counter sniper support, where you can clearly see these guys on rooftops whenever the president goes out to speak. You see the armored vehicles. You see the whole show that goes along whenever the president goes somewhere. What happens with a former president, usually about a month or two after they're in office, these guys normally disappear and you don't see them too often. Maybe they surface once a year to do a car wash opening or some sort of charity event. It's amazing, but it is night and day between being the sitting president and a former president in terms of the level of protection given to one of these folks. Interesting. And what's happened here is President Trump is unique in a lot of ways. The biggest way he's unique is that this guy has maintained a social profile that is exponentially greater than it was when he was the sitting president. To not afford him the level of protection that a sitting president should have been given, it was just, absolutely egregious. And that in itself is pure negligence.
But you know what? Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going, when the Secret Service hides behind this phrase, there's no adverse actionable intelligence to substantiate the level of protection that they gave to former President Trump or candidate Trump is total nonsense. Even though there was no one at the time over the course of the last year, 2 years, telegraphing their intentions, I would go out and say only a moron would not think that given all the statements that President Trump has made since leaving office, that he has not attracted the focus of every fringe lunatic in the world, to include organized groups such as the Mexican cartels, the Iranians, the Chinese, anyone that's come over this border is certainly in the crosshairs, the proverbial crosshairs, and potentially could pose a problem. How the Secret Service could overlook that, total negligence. But then again, this is the same leadership and management that refused to provide any assets and any level of protection to RFK Jr.
Well, yeah, and that's why. So let's go back for a second. So we've got a former president, and from what Rich Staropoli tells me is that the level of protection somehow dwindles. It's not as obvious. It may not be as formidable. But then when he's running for president, doesn't it ramp up again?
One would think it certainly should have ramped up again. However, they treated him just as if he were another candidate. And that in itself is an egregious error. I mean, look at what the former director said during her congressional testimony,
Cheadle.
as well as the current acting director.
Rowe. Yep.
That event in Butler was the first time in a year or a year and a half, depending on whose testimony you're listening to, where the Secret Service provided Secret Service counter sniper assets to President Trump. So I have to ask the question. President Biden, the guy never leaves the White House, and when he does, he goes to his home in Delaware, right? Kamala Harris, up until a month ago, never left the Naval Observatory, which leads to the question, where were all your sniper assets, and what are these guys doing? So when you come out and say you didn't have the assets to give to President Trump, you're lying. Of course you have the assets. They weren't being used for anything else, yet you only treated President Trump as a routine run-of-the-mill candidate. And using that, you said we're not going to give him counter-sniper support. Totally ridiculous, and that's what led to what we saw unfold on live television about a month ago.
All right, and I think everyone would agree, whether you're in Protection 101, that you have an advanced team. You coordinate. Me as a local DA, I would coordinate. We'd have a command center. We'd all be on the same radio frequency or whatever it is now. They didn't have any of that. They didn't have anyone who was willing to go there and coordinate and orchestrate with the locals. And the first thing they did was blame the locals. But of course, the locals had body cams, which kind of put truth to their lie. But let's talk about the fact that that particular roof was left unmanned. Now, this woman, Kim Cheadle, I don't even want to call her the head of the Secret Service, to say there was a slope.
Kidding.
Yeah, it's a joke. To say there was a slope, I mean, you and I both know that you've got these snipers who stand on the edge of a cliff and shoot people. I mean, it's upside down. So it's almost, when they give answers like that, Rich Staropoli, can you understand how the public can think, number one, these people think we're stupid, and number two, they're trying to kill this guy?
Oh, absolutely right. I think you hit it right on the head. They take the approach, they think the American public is stupid. It's the level of arrogance that was displayed by the leadership. But we've seen this throughout the entire administration, right? The minute you press them on a question because you know they're lying to you, they feign indignance, they fold up their binder, and they walk away. And they make it seem as if we're doing something wrong. This was so glaringly obvious what happened here that it borders ridiculous.
All right. What about the fact that there was some intelligence that Iran was trying to kill Donald Trump? And my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Rich Staropoli, is that they won't share this information with the president.
Yeah, see, this is another thing they hide behind, this whole thing about we have this intelligence.
Is it true?
And of course it's true. Absolutely. Wow. Now, I don't know the minutia behind it. Right? I don't know the classified part of it, how they collected it or who their source of the information is, but it's all true. And to not pass this to the president and to the higher levels of the staff so they can make a better informed decision about what events they may or may not want to host, absolutely negligent and totally unacceptable. How they're getting away with operating like this is absolutely the question here.
Yeah, and you would think that this Iranian threat that's been permeating for a while, that also includes Pompeo, and I had Robert O'Brien on a few weeks ago. Yep. I mean, it's not just one person, and yet they're not willing to share the information. But it's very telling that people who were concerned about Donald Trump are the people who know that he's going to, put his knee to their neck. All right, everybody. That's Rich Staropoli, formerly with the Secret Service, the Presidential Protection Team. A lot of experience there, a lot of common sense. And never forget, join the Tunnel to Towers Foundation on its mission to do good in honor of America's heroes. Donate $11 a month at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. And up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, I will be speaking with U.S. Representative for Florida's 3rd Congressional District, Kat Cammack. Coming up right here on the Red Apple Audio Network, she's going to tell me what she thinks of Kamala Harris's speech. Stay with us.